You are basically in a gravitational freefall. I mean, the dense, humid green of the Amazon canopy is just violently whipping past your field of vision.
Right, with leaves and vines tearing at you the whole way down.
Exactly, and there's this murky, dark river rushing up from below to meet you. But the scariest part, you look up, and completely blocking out the filtered jungle sunlight is a massive shadow.
With its talons fully extended.
Yeah, banking sharply to just, follow your descent.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking an absolutely astonishing piece of raw documentary footage today from a source we'll refer to as Apex Truth.
It is incredible footage. It basically tracks a single, completely chaotic day in the life of a young Emperor Tamarin.
But for you listening, this isn't just a simple story about a tiny monkey having a really bad day in the jungle. We're going to deconstruct the actual mechanics of survival here.
Right, the sensory biology, the kinetic energy transfers.
All of it. The sheer ecological friction that keeps the Amazon ecosystem in this crazy, beautiful balance. Because this footage, it serves as a perfect microcosm of predator-prey dynamics. When we watch this tiny tamarin navigating these cascading threats, we're really observing real-time processing of complex risk-reward algorithms.
Algorithms that have been refined over millions of years of evolution. So to understand how our tamarin ends up in that terrifying freefall we just talked about, we have to look at the energetic cost of just existing in the canopy.
Yeah, tamarins run hot. They have incredibly fast metabolisms for their size.
And foraging for scattered insects or little fruits across miles of canopy, that's often a net zero game calorically, right?
Exactly. You burn almost as much energy finding the food as you get from actually eating it, which fundamentally alters their behavioral thresholds.
Right, which brings us to the start of the footage. This young tamarin gets temporarily separated from its troop, and it spots a massive Harpy Eagle nest sitting in this wide tree fork.
And it doesn't immediately flee, which is wild. Instead, it recognizes a biological jackpot.
Because an eagle egg is basically a dense, concentrated payload of fat and protein.
Right. In the thermodynamics of the rainforest, securing that much energy in a single stationary package, that could sustain a small animal for days.
So it decides to approach the nest, which to me is like a cat burglar deciding to rob a mob boss's house while the boss is literally just pulling into the driveway.
That is exactly what it is.
Why would a tiny monkey risk its life going anywhere near the nest of a bird of prey that could swallow it whole?
Well, the tamarin's internal calculus has weighed that caloric density of the egg against the probability of the eagle returning. But the problem is, harpy eagles aren't just large birds.
No, they are highly optimized aerial hunters.
Right. They have a visual processing speed that makes a primate look incredibly sluggish. We're talking about a flicker fusion frequency in their vision that allows them to process rapid movement without any motion blur.
Over vast distances, too. And the eagle actually does return while the monkey is there.
Yeah, and the harpy eagle doesn't just soar above the canopy, it navigates through it. They have these relatively short, broad wings and a long tail that acts like a rudder.
So they can do this high-speed, agile banking right through the dense foliage. And when the eagle spots the tamarin, the distance closes in seconds.
The footage of the chase is just incredible. But it's important to note, it's not a straight sprint.
No, the tamarin isn't trying to outrun the eagle. It can't. It's constantly darting through tightly clustered branches.
Exploiting the structural complexity of the canopy, yeah. It's an asymmetrical evasion tactic.
Because the eagle is huge. It has massive wing loading, right?
Right, a high body weight relative to its wing area, which generates tremendous power, but it severely limits how small of a gap it can punch through.
So the tamarin is just forcing the eagle to constantly recalculate its trajectory, hoping the eagle will stall out.
But physics eventually catches up.
It does. The eagle initiates a strike, sweeping its talons through the leaves. And these talons have the grip strength to crush bone instantly.
The tamarin barely avoids the direct hit, but the evasive maneuver forces it off its footing.
And boom, it goes plummeting out of the canopy. Which brings us right back to that catastrophic biome shift we opened with.
Right. The tamarin hits the river below, and instantly its survival parameters undergo a radical restriction.
Because in the canopy it had, 360 degrees of spherical movement to dodge things?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the water, it is restricted to a two-dimensional fluid plane, just the X and Y axes on the surface.
Moving super clumsily through a medium it is totally not built for.
All while being completely exposed to predators operating in the Z-axis below.
So it's paddling frantically, and it manages to pull itself into this hollowed-out cluster of submerged tree roots on the riverbank to hide.
But the water isn't just an empty medium. It is essentially a massive acoustic and pressure-sensitive web.
Right. The splashing generated this massive hydrodynamic signature, and waiting just beneath the surface is a spectacled caiman.
Equipped with highly specialized sensory biology.
This part is so fascinating to me because caimans, they don't just rely on sight or smell in that murky Amazon water.
No, they have integumentary sensory organs, ISOs.
Which are these tiny pigmented domes covering their jawlines. They act like a biological seismograph network, right?
Exactly. They detect microfluctuations in water pressure. So a single droplet hitting the surface or the thrashing of a monkey creates pressure waves,
And the ISOs map those waves instantly.
giving the caiman a precise three-dimensional targeting vector, even with zero visibility. It just follows the pressure gradient right to the root system.
So now we have this incredible, terrifying convergence. You've got a literal three-way Mexican standoff straight out of a Western movie, just with claws and scales.
Right. The tamarin is frozen inside the root hollow.
The Harpy Eagle, which tracked the fall visually, is perched on a low-hanging branch right outside, just watching the entrance.
And the caiman is lurking right below the surface. Two apex predators from completely different domains converging on a single point of prey.
And this is where the wild twist happens. Because the caiman doesn't wait for the monkey to fall in, it suddenly lunges out of the water and attacks the eagle.
Which breaks every predictable model of predator-prey interaction.
Right. I mean, did the caiman actually think it could eat the eagle, or was this just a chaotic territorial dispute?
Well, it seems totally counterintuitive. An adult Harpy Eagle is heavily armed. But if we look at the neurological triggers of an ambush predator, it isn't making a considered, rational choice.
It's just reacting.
Yes. The strike reflex is activated by crossing a specific sensory threshold. It tracked the monkey to the bank, but suddenly there's a massive disturbance right at the water-air interface when the eagle shifts its weight.
Oh, wow. So the caiman's nervous system just bypasses higher-level processing completely.
Exactly. It identifies the largest proximal stimulus and just fires the ambush sequence. It's a domain collision.
The eagle's presence accidentally overrode the tamarin's signal, and the attack fails, right? The eagle violently backpedals and takes off.
But it scatters the tension. This ecological friction, where predators actively interfere with one another's hunting sequences, it's a massive variable in prey survival. As in nature, no meal is easy.
So they basically canceled each other out. With the eagle gone and the caiman resetting its ambush, the tamarin slips out at dusk.
But escaping the immediate threat leaves it with a much larger systemic problem. It is completely alone.
And for a social primate, isolation is basically a death sentence.
It is. A single tamarin brain just cannot process the necessary sensory data to monitor the rainforest for threats while also looking for food.
So it climbs a tree and lets out this loud, short contact call, like, "I am here, where is everyone?" But wait, isn't that a massive risk? Emitting a loud chirp right after escaping two predators.
It seems like a biological contradiction, right? High-frequency sounds attenuate quickly in dense foliage.
So it has to yell to be heard, broadcasting its location to everything nearby.
But it highlights the extreme calculus of survival. The acute risk of immediate detection is biologically outweighed by the chronic, guaranteed failure of trying to exist alone.
It needs the troop's distributed sensory processing.
Exactly. Dozens of eyes and ears processing the environment simultaneously.
And the troop actually answers the call. But, of course, they are on the other side of the river.
The exact same river it just escaped a caiman from.
Right. It just barely survived the water, and its first instinct is to jump back in. I mean, is the safety of the group really worth a guaranteed swim with a caiman?
We tend to anthropomorphize animal behavior. We assume a near miss would cause a phobia of the water.
Right, like we would never go back in.
But wild survival doesn't allow for psychological paralysis. The biological imperative to reconnect with the troop overrides the localized threat of the water.
So it plunges back into the murky Amazon, fights the current, and miraculously makes it across to rejoin its family.
But the energy expenditure of this entire sequence, the canopy evasion, the fall, the thermal loss in the water, has completely depleted its metabolic reserves.
So the security deficit is solved, but the energy deficit is critical. They have to replenish before nightfall, which drives the troop to a keystone resource, an Amazon wild fig tree.
Fig trees are absolute ecological anchors. Unlike most trees that fruit in narrow seasonal windows, different fig trees fruit asynchronously.
They can provide a massive concentration of sugar year-round. So I kind of look at the wild fig tree like the only 24-hour diner left open in a big city. Everyone from every walk of life is going to end up there.
Which means trouble.
Exactly. Where prey gathers, predators are going to follow.
The concentration of resources creates a highly volatile convergence zone. And tamarins are incredibly messy eaters.
Yeah, as they tear into the figs up high, they are dropping half-eaten fruit and debris all over the forest floor.
They're essentially subsidizing the diet of ground-level scavengers, which creates a trophic cascade effect.
Right. The falling debris pulls in southern Amazon red squirrels,
And the presence of the squirrels acts as a secondary biological magnet.
drawing in a completely different predator, an Ocelot.
This brings us to the final sequence of the footage.
We see this incredibly sleek, muscled wildcat silently using the auditory cover of the feeding monkeys, the snapping branches, the dropping fruit to mask its own approach.
It stalks the squirrels, calculates the trajectory, and lunges.
But it misses. The explosive energy scatters the squirrels.
And this is where the interconnected nature of the fig tree's ecosystem truly manifests. The Ocelot, having just burned energy for a failed ground strike, immediately recalibrates.
It looks up, sees the source of the debris, and spots the tamarins. And it starts to climb.
But this is exactly why the tamarin risked its life to swim the river.
Yep, the neighborhood watch is on duty. An adult tamarin on the perimeter spots the creeping Ocelot and instantly sounds the alarm.
The distributed sensor network functions perfectly. The alarm triggers a synchronized evasion protocol.
The entire troop abandons the heavy branches and scatters out onto the thinnest, most fragile peripheral vines.
Exploiting a massive weight differential.
Because the Ocelot has the agility, but it has too much mass to follow them out there without risking a deadly fall.
So the hunt is completely neutralized. The Ocelot is stranded in the lower canopy, burning calories with zero return.
Okay, so the Ocelot goes 0 for 2. The Eagle failed earlier. The Caiman failed. It really raises a counterintuitive question. Are predators actually just terrible at their jobs?
It's a great question, because wildlife media conditions us to view apex predators as these flawless biological machines.
Right, like they always win.
But if you look at the data, the vast majority of hunts end in failure. And they are operating exactly as the underlying mathematics of the ecosystem require them to.
Wait, really? The math requires them to fail?
Yes. If we apply the Lotka-Volterra equations, the mathematical models describing predator-prey dynamics, we see that predator failure isn't a flaw. It is the load-bearing pillar of the ecosystem's structural integrity.
Because of the thermodynamics of food webs, right? The 10% rule in ecology.
Exactly. Only about 10% of the energy from one trophic level is successfully transferred to the next. Predators require a massive, stable foundation of prey to sustain a very small population of hunters.
So if a predator somehow mutated and got a 100% strike success rate,
it would trigger an ecological collapse. They would rapidly consume the entire reproductive base of their prey.
And they just starve.
Right. Within a single generation, the hyper-efficient predators would starve to death, creating a cascading extinction event.
So the inefficiency is functionally mandated by evolution. The tamarin being agile enough to dodge the eagle, or the troop being observant enough to spot the Ocelot.
It ensures that only the slowest, weakest, or most compromised prey are removed from the gene pool. The continuous systemic failure of predators provides the necessary friction that keeps the biological wheel turning.
It prevents the system from overheating.
Exactly. It forces the predator to constantly burn energy, keeping its own population numbers naturally suppressed.
That is just a stunning realization. We track this tiny emperor tamarin through a single exhausting day. It survived the visual speed of an eagle, the pressure sensors of Caiman, a high-risk river crossing, and an Ocelot.
And it survived all of it because the entire biome is calibrated for near misses. It relies on the fractional margins of error built into every single predator's capabilities.
Which, leaves us with a really fascinating parallel to consider for you listening. We just broke down how the survival of one of the oldest, most complex biological networks on Earth relies entirely on the fact that its most powerful participants frequently fail.
Failure is the ecological friction that sustains balance.
Right. Yet look at how we construct our own modern human ecosystems. Whether it's corporate structures, supply chains, or just our own personal productivity metrics, we are absolutely obsessed with eradicating friction.
We try to build environments with a 100% strike success rate.
Exactly. We engineer our environments to completely eliminate the margin of error, viewing failure as a catastrophic flaw instead of a structural necessity. And when we look at the fragility of heavily optimized human systems, like how quickly a single supply chain disruption can trigger a cascading collapse, it forces us to ask a difficult question.
If nature uses failure as a tool for resilience over millions of years, what happens to us when we refuse to let failure exist?
It really suggests our pursuit of total efficiency might actually be engineering our own instability.
It's a dangerous game to play against the rules of nature.
Something for you to think about the next time a system you rely on doesn't operate with flawless perfection. Maybe that friction is exactly what is keeping the whole structure intact. We will catch you on the next deep dive.